So looking back through history, yeah? Just try this out. So Jesus comes down saying he's the Son of Christ, yeah? Which I think he actually said, we are all the sons and daughters of Christ. I think some of it's been misinterpreted, yeah? And for whatever reason, but this has been done throughout history, by the way. I will give you some references, but I just want to put this into a memo because I'm going to go deeper into this at a later date. So, after they assassinated Jesus, and here's the deal, okay? We've got to remember that it's light and dark. The universe gives. But trust me when I say it, the universe will also take. So there's a very fine medium in the middle, combined. So throughout humanity, divine, and why do I say divine, apostrophe S? Because you could look at Jesus, because he's so well known, yes? That he'd done something for, you could say, God or the divine. Or he could have been a God incarnate. But the easy way to get through the fear filter, because if not, it's going to be quite overwhelming. Do you get what I mean? There would be an overwhelming response if he said he was God. I don't think anyone would have, they'd have probably laughed. But if he says it in a different way, then this transpires in. Then after he got assassinated, a little bit of time passed and it was a little bit murmured, and then humans wait. It's just behavior. They wait and see what happens to the Romans. That's why usually in kingdoms or hierarchies, they always get other people to kill. Yes? So someone at the top will make a demand. Back then it was a kingdom, was it? Religious kingdoms, yeah?
That part was kingdom, yeah. That was King Herod.
And someone ordered something for the Romans to kill Jesus. The Romans perhaps were more like mercenaries, wandering mercenaries to me. They seemed like that they went about and made a living out of doing really anything. Handymen, they would do anything, take territories. Yeah, I think once they understood how powerful they got, that's when they began to evolve as what they were. They got more established. So it always starts out as mercenaries. Mercenaries then become territorial. Then they want control, usually. So Jesus started getting the rounds and probably pissed a lot of people off. When I say a lot of people, I mean like a 1%. Whoever were in power at the time, right? And these scholars or whoever else that were watching at the time learned something very quickly. It was called a pattern. But they've only seen one side of the pattern so far. The rest of it were tall tales. So rather than them doing it, they will devise a plan to get somebody else to do it, and then they watch what happens to that person, whether God's going to smite you or XYZ. Now, it's a funny thing that happened. It transpired in a pattern. But then remember, there are two types of pattern. I'll get onto that. So Jesus is then betrayed by Judas, yes? And the Romans managed to get Jesus. They then assassinate him. And it was almost as if the ground didn't like the Romans. Volcanoes didn't like Romans. Diseases didn't like Romans. Famine struck the Romans. Everything the Romans touched began to become absolutely, unequivocally destroyed. Not all of them, but enough to break what they did, yes? Anyone that was paying attention to all of the old tales that have been told throughout humanity, that have been passed down, We know a lot that ancients and hunter-gatherers were all about balance. But where did they get that from without ever knocking the balance? So they listened to something and understood it and passed it down. They never forgot it. Now, where this came from, it would be twisted because people want to try and dominate. And then after time, like I said, if God were to appear now, many years later, people would be in disbelief. They wouldn't believe it. It's just the way it is. Even if you etched it into stone, people wouldn't believe it. Even if you etched it into trees and the trees survived, people wouldn't believe it. It would be a tall tale. No matter how much humanity goes, it will always be in disbelief. It has to be the is it or isn't it true. Any religious group at the time would have seen what happened to the Romans and started looking at this a bit more closer scrutiny and knew that their fractures would come. They ordered it after all, because it was knocking their hierarchy, so to speak. Then this pushed them up against the fence to try and soften the blow. So they evolved to include Jesus' teachings, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Because they didn't want to lose the power that they had been entrusted with. But by watching what was happening to the Romans, they knew that they were next. So they began to envelop Jesus' teachings rather quickly, and these would be shared around, and that's why we know about it today. Strange thing is, with the religious orders, it still crumbled. Not as bad, and not as violent, and not as deathly and destructively, but it has declined, and it is declining. Then something else rises up, and once again we'll see the same pattern happen again. Now ask the question, what if we go back in history and we rewind the clock and we go back to the time of Jesus, and rather than these individuals basically ordering his assassination, essentially, but began to listen to him back at that time? There's always a true saying, protect a God, God will protect you. Listen to a God, your prayers will be listened to. Help a God will help you. Now, when we say God, we could mean divine, you can mean higher power, you can mean a lot of this stuff. Elevate Jesus, you would have been elevated. Save a God and it would save you. Because one side of the wing understands darkness with white spots, and also we look at the other wing and we see a lot of light dark spots. Do you ever think that throughout the whole of history that any divine that would walk among you has been saved from death, saved from destruction, saved from being this, saved from any of these types of things that we see play out in history? Do you think that anyone that came down from the divine has ever let someone live, incorporated them, helped them? Because after all, being the creator of the universe, but also the destruction of the universe, you think that one group has helped a God and has unlocked a lot of stuff for themselves? Jesus helped a lot of people. But he didn't live. Yeah, back in time, back when hunter-gatherers were about.
That
You see, because again, it's is it or isn't it?
because we don't know that.
What was unlocked for them?
Maybe someone else.
I think in history there has been. That they worked with a god. And I believe that their rewards were far massive. And I think the divine have always helped, regardless of whether what comes their way. But the real test is to test the vessels, not to test the God. So Jesus was being tested left, right, and center by humans. But after all, he is God incarnate. One of, you believe in one, that's up to you. You believe in many, that's up to you. But Jesus, there has been females too. Hermaphrodites, all sorts. The form that makes sense at the time. So under a man's ideology, God's gonna come down as a man. Maybe tried it as a woman, but then tried it as a man, to try and seek reason, to try and seek also help along the way, but also to try and seek the reason, because at the end of the day, it's the vessels that are being tested, not God. So individually, you can ask yourself a question. What happens if I help the divine, this higher power? What happens if I help it? Well, that's a very individual thing and wonderful. Now ask a powerful question. What happens if we help it? What happens if we protect it? What happens if we cherish it? What happens if we elevate it? What happens if we do these things? What happens? You don't do it because you get something, but what do you think could be unlocked? So, a God that's in human form is limited power. This is understandable. But not when you release them from their human form into their true form. Their power is unmatched. The universe, planet, stars will bend to its will. Because what's in it for them to help? They do it without question. So the whole universe can work for you, or the whole universe can just work against you. More things can be unlocked, or things can be taken away. And that's not going to be done in a powered format as now, because incarnate means limited vessel. Limited vessel with some perks, yes. Give it a good life. And what can that do on reverse? Give it a bad life, and it is going to match it. Not now, doesn't need to. In its time. The more we go back in history that we see this, it starts off with tall tales. Some of these civilizations are no longer here. And they also tried to appease it afterwards. That's the tricky thing.
And in a wrong way.
And then it separates the artificial from the real, the willing from the unwilling. It sees, it knows, it understands, it experienced. Then when it travels back, no disrespect when I use the word it, it begins getting to work. Destruction doesn't come with massive chariots coming down and fire bolts from the sky, although these things are possible, but no, it comes in other ways. The will to alter the very shape and format of your planet. The will at command to cause things to happen, but make sure that will is done. And if it's truly at the end, and there is no more offerings to be had, then it's back to the drawing board. Some nations pass down tall tales that they should fear God. Others pull down tales that they should not. Because it's the way you look at power. Power feels so beautiful, so untouchable when you're at that era, when you're in that environment. Because sociology changes you, your environment will change you, no doubt. And it's a hell of a learning curve as well. To remain unseen. And then it's in time, isn't it? Timing. Time only means something to a clock. And then your belief in the time. But what do you reckon God's time is? You can compare this to chips. How do you like your chips? Well, you don't like raw potatoes, don't like raw life forms. They need cooking a little bit more. Oh, okay, try it. And that needs a bit longer. It's just not up to my taste of porridge, or it's just a bit longer. Like I said, I will go deeper into this video at a later date, but just for now, it's just a teaser. But once it gets back, that's when it really begins. And it's not a threat, because these things can be looked at as threats, or manipulation, or evil, or... No, it's not evil. It's none of those things. It's about shaping. And what you do to it could be all of the programming coming out of you of what you need. So some people will be like, we're going to go down even harder on this person now, we're going to do this, this and this. And really what they're teaching themselves is, or teaching everybody else, if you did this to us, watch how you could bring us down. Because someone has to think about doing something, has to plan it, has to get in there and give it as hard as they can. And RFK, his will was done, was it not? Martin Luther King, was it done? Why did these things happen after an assassination?
Because it got people even more together than they were before. Because they saw someone who was fighting for them.
But what was his internal dialogue? Most people, when they pray, you'll be surprised, they pray for something. Only a few ever pray and ask, God, what can I do for you? Do you ever think that that's a very powerful... Now, that's because it's heavy in people's minds that would be called God. Divine spirits. But most people are continuously summoning spirits to do something for them. Spirits, I need you to go and do X, Y, Z to this person. Most spells are done where it's in the negative. So help me God through this situation. I just wonder whether any have worked with, have uplifted, have incorporated, have moved forwards with, together. What happens if Jesus were to die of natural causes? How different with working with the churches would it have been? Would it be more powerful? Would it be the very best thing that you've ever seen? Would it have amplified religious groups around the world to not have crumbled? But yet, if they were devious enough to employ Romans, not walk up and say, hey, this is wrong, you will not be doing this. They could have utilized any money rather than paying Judith. What could have Judith have done? What if everything would have went in the opposite direction? You see, that's the part it is a mystery. Is it or isn't it? What happens if groups would have worked with Martin Luther King? Well, it would have leveled up the world pretty quickly, to be honest. But what would have happened if it had died of natural causes as opposed to someone from somewhere? It's not identified to be someone in America that did that. It could be someone... It's a land of the free back then, wasn't it? You could get into America very easily. And if other parts of the world see it and know that it could knock their order, they could get into America and do it. Do you get what I'm... You see... So, again, it's not inherently pointing at anyone in particular, but it is looking at that if these individuals would have died of natural causes, rather than the ground opening up and erupting around Romans and then diseases, not all of them, but most of them. What do you think would have been different? Do you think then the churches would have been more powerful and still standing today if they didn't put Galileo under house arrest? How much more different would this be?
They have moved forward fast.
Would they have been at the top? And it's very strange that after all of these people are assassinated in these events, because they can't be sure whether these are or not, because as they say, and it is very true, that the divine work in mysterious ways, and they truly do. And the whole is it or isn't it, it has to be that way. It has to be mystery. Mystery gets you investigating to try and find out. But again, if it had gone in a different way, rather than it being in the negative destruction and the eroding of all of these structures, how much more uplifting? No one ever asks these questions. They always look at it in a very different way, but there are many patterns that emerge throughout history. It's incredible. And a few spike where they've gone and worked with. And in this, there has been a mass amount of abundance. These individuals are no longer here. Now I wonder what their after is all about, because they got it. Those chips that started off as potatoes, raw, evolved in such a way that their makeup, everything that they are already unlocked, that they were the perfect fry. They leveled up physically, they leveled up spiritually, on a soul level, on a quantum level. You'll also notice something else that will happen when these ones go against. They create massive monuments just before they go. It's the trademark signature. Romans will build roads that will last an entirety of a time, as if not warning all other life forms, if they read it correctly, that this is what you could have had. Their structures last an incredible amount of time. Now, whether they're lost to the ocean, their structures always stand, remnants of them. And then it's almost like reality glitches. You start to see signs. There's big signs everywhere. Loads of signs. Anyone that's got even half a mind to pay attention to these after the event will begin to see them. And then you got to ask yourself the question of why, when these people are removed, assassinated, does someone somewhere, a group somewhere, immobilize very quickly to have that will done in order to try and lessen the blow? And then do you ever think that a civilization that goes back through time and starts erecting remnants of these, so like there's statues of Galileo, there are certain statues of individuals in the past, yes, that these people are found, dusted off and erected. Do you ever think that that acts like a talisman? Yes, a talisman, a portal, a beacon, a signature, a message. Do you ever think that erecting these things then begin to lift you quite a bit? Egyptian temples, go and look in there and grab the artifacts and try and protect them in some way. But protect them from whom is a very good question. And for what reason are you taking those things for? Is it to gain power? then is it to walk in power, or is it to walk to empower or devour other people? That's another question entirely. And then you'll notice it, the societies will build a few remnants just before something happens. So like a statue of Jesus becomes erected. Does anything in those areas start to send a beacon, a pulse that allows prosperity and a lot of growth and a lot of wonderful things that start to happen in that particular area? Because it's rewriting the history, although it's not yours, but you understand the point, and therefore it should be teaching you that, shit, every time we do this, something really good happens. Something happens. And that's a remnant of power, not the power. So to hunt and track down a god incarnate and try and find ways to find them, is this because of this reason? That somewhere someone knows, a group know, that if they were to find it, and begin adjusting the frequency wheels around, could this begin to bad intention is to hold on to it for later date. That's what you could understand as that's a It may not be able to protect you in human form, but once it crosses over, it can protect you in a multitude of ways. Yes, that's one level of a gift. Next level is how you use it. Then when you use it wisely, then there becomes another and another and another, and then you start to climb the pyramid. Thoughts get clearer. Your capabilities unlock further and faster. You'll be able to do things that would even shock you in such short amount of times. That you begin to lift up. And then others are either gonna become very jealous of that. There's nothing they can do about it as long as you walk the road. But it would be then to help do what gods would prefer you to do, would be to unlock them and try and change the pinwheel of that to help other people walk the same path as you. And when they get it and they begin to get it, it then unlocks even more, then even more, then even more come together like that, then even more come together like it, then even more gets unlocked. And then this sends another beacon that you're ready, somewhat ready. And then once again, it'll incarnate, perhaps not, male or female, hermaphrodite, walk among you, blending in. And then very authentically, you would be aware of that, and very quickly you'd begin to adjust. And as this adjustment happens, then do you think you level up again, level up again, level up again, level up again? Then your children's children are beginning to level up, and then these are beginning to level up, and then at what purpose? At what point? At where does this lead you? So far we see it in the negative, never in the positive. Perhaps the chessboard is not about getting to the end of the board to get your queen back, but it's usually to allow the divine to get to the end of life expectancy. And then you could look at the divine saying a very simple message. Treat me as you want to be treated. Love me like you want to be loved. Although that doesn't make sense in today's world, but still. I think a few of these are some, maybe from Jesus hidden, maybe. It's not just Jesus, there's been quite a few. The longer Jesus is with you, how much more could you have learned? That's the question. How much more could he, the longer he was with you? Perhaps he went mute for a few years, and then at another trimester of life it unlocked something else because it was already coded into the vessel, but it had to go through certain junctures first to question the is it or isn't it. Do you understand? Am I making sense? I think it's because you're half asleep, so I try to have a conversation. No, it's cool, it's quite late. Early, actually, it's very early, I understand that, but it's just thinking out of the box. I will definitely dive into this a little bit deeper later on, because there's a few more bits to this than meets the eye, and there's a lot I've missed out on purpose, but it's pattern. There's a pattern here. Especially when looking at Jesus and all of the events that transpired afterwards. Again, I guess in that way it is true what some people say, and I've heard this been mentioned here and there throughout life, that the history can only be seen when you look backwards, but never in real time as in now. In the now moment it's hard to see it, right? It's only when you ever look backwards at it that you then begin to see a pattern emerge. And that pattern then teaches groups, orders, whatever it is, to then look for particular vessels. And if Jesus ever said, I will be back.
Did he say that?
I believe so, yeah. But never said how. Never said when. Until Christ returns. The orders would know. I think the religious orders would know it. They would feel it straight away, I think, because I think this has been passed down, and I think in the Vatican, and I think in somewhere they've got some texts in this, but again they're unsure who wrote it and what the meaning behind it was, but I don't think they disregard it either. I think they've seen something, they worked something out back then, they've realized, and I think that the reason why certain orders have been looking for this, they don't want to make history repeat, and I think that they want to get back into good grace, let's say. Do you ever think that any structure following along can learn from the past mistakes and learn to rectify those into the future? Yeah, I'm a believer in that. I believe that it can all learn, and any remnants of Romans left, did they heed? But do they have enough knowledge to know that? That's the question. Whereas you'd think that religious orders would have enough information, a lot more than what's already been said, to be able to know this. Life delicate. Holding on to something divine is even more fragile. There are lots of texts that are hidden.
in a variety of places.
And some of these have been hidden deliberately.
Different
And some of them,
religions.
they have to hide. Because there are certain keys in these. Not keys for anything else, but when you utter lines that are eerily similar to what they have that's hidden, that sort of sends them a message. Aha. And then they begin to piece these together a little bit more, and then it's like, ooh. Is it? Isn't it? Could it be? Was it fluke? Was it this? Could it have been? It's always got to be in that is it or isn't it, because is it light? Is it dark? It always is questioned. The answer is both. But there's another one on top of that. You want the formation of the light and the dark merged together. The grey zone, it's technically not grey, but still. You want the colour. Look it. The grey zone is seen like this, right? So it can be really bad in one way, right? So bad for Romans, but pretty good for other people, yeah? Not so great for this group over here, not so great for this group over here, but overall great for humans as a whole because they can begin to evolve again. A new system grows out of it, this, that, and the other. That's the grey zone. So hit and miss is a little bit of both, and that's merged together. Or there is a colour zone, which you could see as light. But you're also going to need some darkness in there in order to see colour. This is good for everything. Every single thing. That's what you want. Yeah. Oh yeah. Because if it's good for nature, it's good for you. If it's good for animals, it's also good for you. The force that be can make a whole universe, a whole recycling system, the whole thing. Its power could touch the life of every living thing on the planet, solar system, beyond, and universe. There's a big difference. Pretty beautiful thing, wouldn't you say so? Hard to believe it though, isn't it? Is it? Isn't it? Could it be? Could it not be? And there again, there'd be a whole lot of trust built around that. But again, it's not about trust, it's about, ooh, what say you? Well, come on then, make it happen now. That's not how it works. Well, then you're nothing. Then that's what you accept. But then you're something. Then that's also what you accept. The truth be told, it will be after. In true power, in true form. That's when it can really make things happen. Both ends of the spectrum. To the Romans, Jesus would have been a devil. To the people, he was magic. His presence never left. Many years later, and the presence is still here. That's it. That's the bit. Is there a devil? That's your interpretation of it. Is there a God? That's also your interpretation of it. And no life forms, depending on the side of the coin you walk, are going to see it in two different ways, in duality. In the death, the birth of something else came. Yes. Then, if it had done nothing, and the Romans roamed in their big fucking numbers and lacking of their diseases, then the people would have seen Jesus as a not so good, and the Romans would have seen it as good and God. Yes? There was almost a moment afterwards that they did it. There was a uh-oh moment. Oh shit. Lots of them began to question what they had done. They even wrote this as much. Some of them started backpedaling. These are the remnants that were left behind. The ones that were adamant, fuck him! Those were the ones the ground couldn't even stand. Darkening skies, failing crops, volcanoes erupting, everything just went bad for them. And some of them repented in that moment. Bit late, but still, there's going to be some mercy shown there. Oh yeah, higher power. It is not all ego and swings and roundabouts, because, you know, if you look at Jesus in that way, he probably didn't want to do it. He might have wanted to forgive, but there's a time for forgiveness. And after that, that's not it. That's when there's a real decision to be made. And it is not easy, but it has to be done. And it's not retaliation, it's for the greater good, right? The larger majority that will be left. Interesting. Anyway, I'm going to dive down deeper into this one at a later date. So for now, this is just where I'm going to leave it. But it just gets you thinking, and maybe gets you paying attention to the patterns. And hey, either or, whether you are religious, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in a particular God, whether you believe in spirits, whether you believe in divine vessels, whether you believe in people being collected and converted into gods or into God's kingdom. Being a kingdom, bit weird, but still, you know, what could you do with all of that? And whether you believe in devil, I think you're mistaken. It's the same coin. What side? Always the middle. And therefore, you could say, God, the force, universe, is a divot. It reflects back, not reflects, that's the wrong word. It gives you back what you give out. Interesting. Anyway,